Developing news in the last 24 hours as we're hearing that there is an Iranian state threat alert for attacks in the United States and Europe that has come out. I'm going to be sharing with you the latest video footage and articles. Take a look at the headlines with me. You can see this coming out yesterday. U.S. and NATO allies warn of increasing Iranian threats in Europe and North America, and they are saying these are attacks that could take place on our soil. Now, also, take a look at this. The U.S. Virtual Embassy Iran joint statement on Iranian state threat activity in Europe and in the United States. Now, this comes as we are hearing, take a look at this just coming out. The U.S. must agree to compensate Iran before nuclear talks, says the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. So he is saying the United States must pay Iran for the damage that was done to their nuclear facilities in order for them to come back to the negotiating table. Now, the U.S. hits back at Iran war compensation demands. You can see this coming out today, August 1st, 2025, saying this is ridiculous. I'm going to share with you the article. Iran says that it has plenty of scientists left to restart their uranium enrichment program despite the U.S.-Israeli strikes. Iran coming back very aggressively, saying we are not going to stop our enrichment programs. We will achieve whatever we want with uranium, which even if it means nuclear weapons. Now, this comes as well as, take a look at this, the anti-U.S. axis isn't dead. It's just resting. Russia, China, North Korea, they failed to help Iran when it was getting bombed by the United States, and yet their four-way coalition lives on and will become more ominous. And this comes as today as well. I shared with you the breaking news as soon as it had come out that Trump says he has now moved 2 nuclear submarines after Russia's Medvedev warns the United States of potential nuclear war. That's war with Russia and the U.S., and that is not an exaggeration. I shared with you the back-and-forth rhetoric that unfolded overnight, and today we're hearing that they are saying that Medvedev is saying that Russia is threatening the U.S. with potential nuclear attacks. He says, remember the Walking Dead series that you love so much, Donald Trump, and the automatic nuclear launch strike systems that Russia has. And today, Donald Trump said, okay, this might be inflammatory, ridiculous statements, but just in case, we're moving nuclear submarines into position for potential war with Russia. So a lot going on today, August 1st, 2025. I'm going to be sharing with you the latest on this. Let me know your thoughts. Are we going to be going to war? If so, put war in the comments. If you think we're going to be able to stave off war and have peace, put peace. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Where are we going to be going here with Iran? Now, in addition to that, as I mentioned, a lot unfolding today with Russia as well. But I'm going to get you caught up on the latest. As always, I'm going to cite all of these sources. They are hyperlinked in the description. You can click them, see the articles that I'm referencing, see the dates, see the sources. I'm going to put it on the screen, read right from it so you can know and rest assured that this is the latest information coming out. And if you appreciate that, do me a favor, take a quick second, hit that thumbs up like button. That helps spread this out further across the YouTube platform while we're live. I see we currently have about 1,400 people with me live. If you have not done so yet, please hit that like button. If we could get half of the room to hit the like button, that's about 700 likes. If you see it's not there yet and you haven't hit it, please do so. It helps a ton while we're live. Also, to stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not hit that subscribe button? Turn on that notification bell so you're notified. Pretty much been doing updates every day. And today, this is my second live stream because of the breaking news we had with Russia. And now the updates coming out with the attack alert on U.S. soil coming out from Iranian state actors. So a lot going on. I will keep you up to date on all of it. But let's go ahead and get right to it. And let's start off with some video footage so you can see it for yourself what's coming out. Then we're going to dive into these articles to get you more details as to what's been taking place. Let's go ahead and take a look.
And we do have this statement as we stay in the Middle East from the U.S. State Department. They are talking about this Iranian state threat. They say, quote, "We are united in our opposition to the attempts of Iranian intelligence services to kill, kidnap, and harass people in Europe and North America in clear violation of our sovereignty. These services are increasingly collaborating with international criminal organizations to target journalists, dissidents, Jewish citizens, and current and former officials in Europe and North America. This is unacceptable. We consider these types of attacks, regardless of the target, as violations of our sovereignty. We are committed to working together to prevent these actions from happening, and we call on the Iranian authorities to immediately put an end to such illegal activities in our respective territories, end quote. And that is, of course, a quote, as I mentioned, from the U.S. State Department. We do also have this post from the Bureau of Counterterrorism, as they say, we are united in our opposition to the attempts of Iranian intelligence services to kill, kidnap, and harass people in Europe and North America in clear violation of our sovereignty. We know that the U.S. and 13 of their allies, including the U.K. and Canada, coming together to condemn what they call a surge in assassination, kidnapping, and harassment plots by Iranian intelligence services that are targeting people in North America and Europe. A lot to discuss there out of the Middle East, so I do want to bring in David Dowd, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. David, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Pleasure to be on, Josh.
And first, I do want to talk to you about the statement that I was just reading there from the U.S. and 13 allies there, including Canada, the U.K., and a lot of other allies. What is the significance of that statement, and what are they really saying?
Oh, the significance of it is that we're finally recognizing what the Iranian regime has done since its rise to power in the late 1970s and 1979. There were spates of assassination campaigns, not just in the Middle East, not just in Iran, but of dissidents, opposition figures, people that had fallen out of favor with the regime in France in the 1980s, at the hands of Iranian agents, including through people that would become affiliated with what would later turn into Hezbollah. So this isn't anything new for the Iranian regime. This has continued throughout its history up until the present, and we're finally acknowledging it. We're finally acknowledging that the issue, and when I say we, I mean the collective West is finally acknowledging it. The issue coming out of Iran is not just nuclear weapons, and the problems with Iran are not just confined to the Middle East. They are targeting people, be they Iranian citizens on our soil, or our own citizens or any other citizens. They're targeting people on our soil, and this is reaching our part of the world. This isn't just confined to the Middle East. This isn't just a problem. If we turn a blind eye to it, like some of us would like to do, then it'll just go away.
Want to try terzepatide?
So this is terzepatide, and it is the #1.
As far as the Iranian government, have we heard any kind of reaction to this statement? I imagine the answer is probably no for the most part. And do we expect that we are going to get some kind of big reaction to this?
Well, I mean, they've actually denied it, but of course they are. What are they going to do? Admit that they've plotted to assassinate or target or harass people on Western soil? That would obviously put them on a direct collision course with Western countries. Deny. This is what they've always done, despite the fact that there's incontrovertible evidence in many cases to Iran's connection to a lot of these actions.
And of course, there's obviously, as I mentioned, a lot to discuss here. So how widespread would you say that these threats really are when you look at them? Because they listed a lot of different folks there, including journalists and other officials. We know that threats have been made against President Trump, not just once by Iran, but many times.
If I'm not mistaken, there's actually an individual in custody in the Southern District of New York for such a plot against President Trump. And my colleague, Behnam Ben Taleblu, has actually written a piece on these assassination attempts or these assassination threats, if anyone's interested. But they're widespread in both time and space. Like I said, they go back to 1979, attacks on dissidents, either from direct Iranian agents or from affiliates that were affiliated with their terrorist groups. They've targeted a variety of people, the U.S. president, right? There are threats against Mike Pompeo and other former Trump administration officials from the first Trump administration. There are threats against Iranian dissidents, Iran international journalists in the UK, Masih Alinejad in New York. So they target a broad spread of people. These threats have continued over time, and geographically they're widespread. The United States, Western Europe, and in the Middle East. Look, if we look at countries like Lebanon, for example, there was a spate of assassinations against dissidents, politicians that were in opposition to Hezbollah and Iranian interests in the early 2000s, and that continued for some time. The latest person that is alleged to have been killed by Hezbollah, a Lebanese dissident, was named Luqman Saleem. If I'm not mistaken, he was killed in 2022. So again, from high official to low officials to average people who just speak out against the regime, to journalists, this is how the Iranian regime operates. We can't expect them to operate any differently outside of their borders than they do against people within their borders. They just do it more subtly and try to create an element of plausible deniability. But thankfully, with this statement, the ground under their feet seems to be shrinking.
I do want to pop this up on your screen right here because we know that Ambassador Mike Huckabe, I mentioned this kind of off the top, he did go into Gaza today, and he says observed humanitarian food program by the U.S. that launched GHF. Hamas hates GHF because it gets food to people without it being looted by Hamas. Over 100 million meals served in 2 months. So again, Huckabe, as well as Steve Witkoff, the U.S. envoy to the Middle East, are there in Gaza. How significant is a visit like that? Because we know that Gaza can be very dangerous, especially right now, especially when you're talking about Hamas.
Look, I mean, I think it's significant in that Ambassador Huckabe and Mr. Witkoff can go see the operations themselves and how they're proceeding, and the distribution mechanism to these hungry Palestinians who deserve this aid. In terms of danger, yes, Gaza is dangerous. I think these visits were announced ahead of time. I doubt Hamas would have targeted a U.S. ambassador or a U.S. envoy, especially one with whom they're negotiated or engaged in negotiations, at least deliberately. That would have put them on a severe collision course with the United States. And I think right now what they want is to leverage whatever they can with the U.S. administration to stop Israel's campaign in Gaza. That would work at cross ends with that purpose. There's always the risk of unintended consequences, right? Does a low-ranking Hamas member who doesn't know what Ambassador Huckabe or Mr. Witkoff look like attack them as they have attacked, GHF sites in the past? I think this also is meant to lend credence and legitimacy to GHF operations, right? These have come under severe criticism from aid groups, particularly those involved with the United Nations. And if we're being honest, look, the GHF, I think their heart is absolutely in the right place. I think they're trying to do the right thing. I think their mission of not being neutral, because a lot of these organizations have this principle of neutrality when it comes to aid distribution, not vis-a-vis Gazans. Obviously, they have to be neutral vis-a-vis Gazans, but vis-a-vis Hamas, where these aid organizations, the traditional aid organizations, in a misguided attempt to help the people of Gaza, end up cooperating with Hamas to some degree or another, just like the ICRC cooperates with Hamas to some degree or another, because they are the local authority. GHF, its mission is to exclude Hamas from that process, to delegitimize Hamas in the process of getting food to Gazans. At the same time, it's a new organization, and delivering humanitarian aid in a combat zone, an active combat zone, especially one like the Gaza Strip, is one of the most complicated missions possible. Add to that, you have an enemy, Hamas, that is embedded among the civilian population that has an interest, because of GHF's exclusion of the organization, in foiling these attempts. So GHF is working on a steep learning curve, and there have been mistakes, but their heart is absolutely in the right place. And I think what all these other aid organizations must do is, rather than condemn GHF, perhaps assist them and emulate them in excluding Hamas from the distribution process or from any part of the process of getting aid to civilians in Gaza.
And David, the last question I want to ask you is about a topic that, of course, you have been paying very close attention to. We know that just yesterday, or over the past several days, we have seen Israeli operations there against Hezbollah. Can you tell me if that ceasefire that exists is still intact, and the situation that is unfolding here between Israel and Hezbollah? Because so much focus has been on Gaza, but you also have the situation there with Hezbollah.
Hello. My name is Adam Ferrari, the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to
I mean, these Israeli operations have been going on since November 27th of 2024, virtually, right? Since the day the ceasefire was inked. And the reason for that, the ceasefire is technically still intact, but we have daily operations, near daily assassinations of Hezbollah officials. It's technically a failure in the sense that a proper ceasefire, a successful ceasefire, the letter of the ceasefire succeeding would have seen the Lebanese government do the job that the Israelis are doing right now, rolling up and dismantling and disarming the rest of Hezbollah's fighters, their infrastructure, conducting arrests if necessary, but doing what a sovereign nation is supposed to do, and that is to prevent the growth or the existence of a terrorist organization on its territory from threatening a sovereign state, a neighboring sovereign state like Israel. So that has not happened. And where we see Hezbollah today, which had competing statements from President Joseph Aoun, who's the president of Lebanon since January, and Naim Qassem, the new Secretary General of Hezbollah. Qassem is saying we're not disarming. That's been Hezbollah's consistent line since November 27, 2024. Most recently, he said, any attempt to get us to surrender our arms is basically getting us to surrender our arms to Israel, and we're never going to do that. He's framing this as an attempt to keep Lebanon strong. Of course, they're engaging in some kind of manipulation here. Meanwhile, President Aoun is saying, no, we want to monopolize arms in the hands of the state. And the army should be the only actor that carries arms, that defends Lebanon. He named Hezbollah by name for the first time publicly, and I think that was a very positive step. The problem is there have been no actual concrete measures beyond that to secure Hezbollah's disarmament. They're still in this idea of talking to each other. And this is what Hezbollah wants, because as long as this remains in bilateral talks or consensual talks, then Hezbollah will be able to dominate the conversation and say, we're not going to disarm. So until then, we're going to see a continuation of these Israeli strikes, because, again, while the ceasefire holds in theory, in practice, one side, Lebanon, is failing to enforce it, and that is causing the entire ceasefire to fail.
There you have it, you guys. Wow. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, again, these are concerns as well, as we had heard, of Iranian state threat alert for the United States and Europe as well. Now, they got a little bit into what's happening with Hamas and Gaza, and they're saying that their potential, we've been hearing this for quite some time, for attacks on U.S. soil from sleeper cell groups that are here, and they are warning about the potential attacks to civilians, to individuals that are here. They're saying, please be on the lookout. Let me know in the comments, are you concerned about this? If you are concerned about sleeper cell attacks, about potential terror attacks on U.S. soil, put a 1 in the comments. If you're not really too concerned about it, you don't think that this is going to be unfolding, even though we're getting these warnings coming out in the last 24 hours, put a 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's take a look at these articles that have been coming out so you can see it for yourself. We're going to get into the details as to what has been released. U.S. and NATO allies warn of increasing Iranian threats in Europe and in North America. You can see this coming out July 31st, yesterday, 2025. The United States and many of its NATO allies are accusing Iran of a growing number of threats throughout Europe and North America and demanding that it end its attempts to harm descendants and others. Now, we are united in our opposition to the attempts of the Iranian intelligence services to kill, kidnap, and to harass people in Europe and North America in clear violations of our sovereignty. The joint statement was released on Thursday, said, these services are increasingly collaborating with international criminal organizations to target journalists, descendants, Jewish citizens, and current and former officials in Europe and in North America. It said, this is unacceptable. So there have been warnings as well to journalists, to those that are reporting the news, to descendants, to Jewish citizens, current and former officials in Europe and North America, and they clarify in the United States specifically, this is unacceptable. Let me know. Again, are you concerned about the potential attacks, the threats in the United States? If so, put a 1. If no, put a 2. Now, the joint statement was signed by NATO members: Albania, Belgium, Britain, Canada, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and the United States. The only non-NATO member to sign was Austria, headquarters of the UN nuclear watchdog. Now, the statement said that any such attack would be considered violations of our sovereignty, and the governments committed to working together to foil any plot while calling on Iran to immediately put an end to such illegal activities in our respective territories. Now, the statement did not identify any particular attack, although the U.S. and others have warned for many years of Iranian-sponsored plots on European and U.S. soil. So again, just to clarify, these would be attacks by proxy groups on U.S. soil. British Intelligence officials have repeatedly warned of the growing scale of Tehran-backed plots in Britain as well. 3 alleged Iranian spies currently face charges that they conducted surveillance on and plotted violence against UK-based journalists for an Iranian news outlet. Earlier this month, Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee said Iran poses a wide-ranging, persistent, and unpredictable threat to the UK. In earlier July, German prosecutors announced that a man suspected of gathering information on Jewish locations and people in Berlin for Iranian intelligence, possibly with a view to attacks, had been arrested in Denmark. They did not elaborate. Now, despite the ongoing threat, the Trump administration earlier this year rescinded government-funded protections for several former officials from President Donald Trump's first term. Now, that protection had been provided and repeatedly extended during the Biden administration due to threats from Iran against former National Security Advisor John Bolton, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former Iran envoy Brian Hook, and a number of military officers. So there you have it, you guys. They are warning of this. Let's take a look at the actual joint statement so you can see it for yourself. This coming out yesterday as well. Joint statement of Iranian state threat activity in Europe and the United States. The United States, the UK, Albania, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Czechia, Denmark, Finland, France, Greece, the Netherlands, Spain, and Sweden have a statement together. This is the joint statement of Iranian state threat activity in Europe and the United States. So again, it said North America in the article, but to clarify, it is concerns in the U.S. This coming out July 31st, 2025. And here are all of the joint nations together. It says, we are united in our opposition to the attempts of Iranian intelligence services to kill, kidnap, and harass people in Europe and North America in clear violation of our sovereignty. These services are increasingly collaborating with international criminal organizations to target journalists, descendants, Jewish citizens, and current and former officials in Europe and North America. This is unacceptable. We consider these types of attacks, regardless of the target, as violations of our sovereignty. We are committed to working together to prevent these actions from happening, and we call on Iranian authorities to immediately put an end to such illegal activities in our respective territories. So this was released yesterday, this update regarding potential attacks on U.S. soil against individuals. And again, let me know your thoughts on this. Do you think this is a major concern or no? 1 in the comments if you do, 2 if you think not. Now, in the meantime, we're trying to see if there's going to be some sort of a negotiation agreement between the United States and Iran on their nuclear facilities. Well, what we're hearing is, take a look at this. Iran says that the U.S. must agree to compensation before nuclear talks. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says. Now, the U.S. hits back at Iran on their war compensation demands. So let's take a look at this to get you the latest updates on this. This coming out today, August 1st. And let's take a look here and see what this article from Newsweek has to say. The United States has sharply rejected Iran's call for financial compensation following recent American strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, calling the request ridiculous and urging Tehran to end its destabilizing activities if it hopes for economic relief or sanction relief. Now, if you like the sound of that, you like the approach that the administration is taking, saying your request for compensation is ridiculous, drop a 47 in the comments for support for this current Trump administration. Now, if you don't like that, drop a 46 for the way the previous administration handled it. Let me know your thoughts. And also, if you haven't done so yet, please take a second, hit that like button. We almost got half of the room to hit the like button so far. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told the Financial Times that Washington must accept responsibility for the attacks and provide financial redress before nuclear negotiations could resume. U.S. State Department Principal Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott dismissed that position in a press briefing, saying the U.S. remained open to diplomacy, but insisted the burden of progress now lay with Iran. Newsweek has reached out to the State Department and Iran's foreign ministry for comments. Look at those 47s pouring into the comments, people saying they like the way Donald Trump is handling things. Now, here's why it matters. The exchange highlights deepening diplomatic tensions between Tehran and Washington, even as both sides navigate the fragile aftermath of June's military confrontation when the U.S. and Israel carried out joint strikes on Iranian targets, including Iran's nuclear facilities. Tehran's insistence on reparations underscores the rising political stakes surrounding stalled nuclear talks, while the U.S. response signals a hardened stance against further concessions. Now, with nuclear diplomacy at a standstill and regional actors watching closely, the current impasse could have far-reaching consequences for non-proliferation, sanctions policy, and regional security in the Middle East. So here's what to know. Pigott offered a forceful rebuff on Iran's compensation demand, stating it was inconsistent with Tehran's actions in the region. Any demand for financial compensation from the United States to the Iranian regime are ridiculous, Pigott said at the Washington briefing. He accused Iran of misallocating resources and prolonging its own isolation through aggressive behavior. If the Iranian regime really wanted to save money, they would stop funding terrorist death squads, stop oppressing their own people, and stop wasting money on nuclear programs that isolates them even further, he added. Now, is there room for diplomacy? Despite the strong rhetoric, Pigott signaled that the U.S. was not closing the door on negotiations. Now, let me know if you agree with that. Should we have negotiations or should we strike Iran? Now, Israel has said that they are ready. They just need the word from Donald Trump, and they will go ahead and initiate strikes, wipe out all nuclear facilities, and hit Iran hard. Donald Trump is saying that he wants to see if there is some form of negotiations and peace that can be reached, some sort of deal prior to that. Should we strike Iran or should we work on a deal? Let me know. War or deal? Drop your thoughts in the comments in regards to Iran. Now, his remarks followed Araghchi's assertion. Let me go back one line. Iran has a short window of opportunity, but the ball is in Iran's court, he said. We're waiting to see what they do. His remarks followed Araghchi's assertion that Tehran would not return to talks without confidence-building measures, including financial redress and assurance against further strikes. Now, Iran and the U.S. had been engaged in nuclear negotiations and had additional talks scheduled before the initial Israeli strike on June 13th. Stalled nuclear talks. Araghchi added that Iran and the United States had exchanged messages throughout the June war, but described the diplomatic path as narrow. He warned that any effort by European nations to reinstate UN sanctions under the 2015 nuclear accord would terminate talks with the UK, France, and Germany. With the Europeans, there is no reason right now to negotiate. They can't lift sanctions. They cannot do anything, he said. So what are people saying? U.S. State Department Principal Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott. Any demands for financial compensation from the United States to the Iranian regime are ridiculous. Now, the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, they should explain why they attacked us in the middle of negotiations. And they have to ensure that they are not going to repeat that, and they have to compensate Iran for the damage that they have done. Now, what happens next? Technical discussions between Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency are expected in the coming weeks, though formal negotiations between Tehran and Washington powers remain frozen amid mutual distrust and the recent imposition of new sanctions. So there you have it, you guys. Wow. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Again, if you are proud of Donald Trump and his handling of this and telling them that this is ridiculous. We heard from Mr. Pigott, who said this is insane. There will be no compensation to Iran for us striking them. Drop a 47 in the comments for support. Now, if you disagree, drop a 46. But take a look at this. Take a look at the rhetoric that is coming out from Iran in response to this. You can see here coming out today, Iran says, well, we have got plenty of scientists left to restart our uranium enrichment program despite the U.S.-Israeli strikes. We're going to go ahead and do whatever we want. Go ahead and take a look at this. Iran still has the capabilities to enrich uranium despite U.S. and Israeli strikes and could restart its nuclear program if it wanted to, Tehran's foreign minister claimed. Now, while the U.S. struck 3 key Iranian nuclear sites, Israel destroyed much of its airbase defenses took out top military commanders and killed at least 13 nuclear scientists and more than 1,000 people, according to figures put out by Tehran. Israel claims it killed 30 senior security officials and 11 top nuclear scientists. Buildings can be rebuilt. Machines can be replaced because the technology is there. We have plenty of scientists and technicians who used to work for our facility, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said in a recent interview with the Financial Times. But when and how we restart our enrichment depends on the circumstances. Now, Washington maintains that it inflicted significant damage to Iran's two main uranium enrichment sites, Fordow and Natanz, and fired missiles that rendered the Isfahan facility essentially inoperable, setting Iran's nuclear program back, quote, years. Now, the world is watching to see whether Iran and the West will be able to come to a deal that ensures Iran does not work towards a nuclear weapon in exchange for sanctions relief. Araghchi said the U.S. must offer funds to Iran to compensate for last month's strikes in order to move forward with negotiations. They should explain why they attacked us in the middle of negotiations, and they have to ensure that they are not going to repeat that during future talks, Araghchi said. They have to compensate Iran for the damage that they have done. Araghchi claimed the so-called 12-day war proved there is no military solution for Iran's nuclear program. Araghchi also said that the strikes had prompted calls from within the regime to weaponize Iran's nuclear program, but claimed Iran would continue to abide by a 2-decade-old fatwa banning the production of nuclear weapons. Now, anti-negotiation feelings are very high, Araghchi said. People are telling me, don't waste your time anymore. Don't be cheated by them. If they come to negotiations, it's only a cover-up for their other intentions. The minister repeated Iran's insistence that it would not give up its ability to enrich uranium for civil purposes, a sticking point for Washington. With zero enrichment, we don't have a thing, he said. Now, the White House could not immediately be reached for comments on Araghchi's remarks. Israeli officials have admitted that some of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium did survive the attacks, and we've heard that they have enough enriched uranium at 60% to which, if they took it to the 90% level, they would be able to have at least 9 nuclear warheads. Some suggest even about a dozen, and we're also hearing that they could be purchasing this as well from other nations in Africa that could provide them with as much as 30 nuclear warheads that they could get from the uranium that they are purchasing. European powers have threatened to trigger snapback United Nations sanctions against Iran if there isn't a breakthrough in nuclear talks. Any of the current members of the 2015 nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, France, UK, Germany, China, and Russia, they can invoke snapback mechanisms if they determine that Iran hasn't held up its end of the deal. The U.S. can't trigger the sanctions because it pulled out of the deal and enacted unilateral maximum pressure sanctions under Trump's first administration. The U.S. heaped more pressure onto Tehran this week with the new sanctions on the nation's oil network and military drone enterprise. European diplomats have been meeting with Iran to relay how it could avoid snapback sanctions, including resuming cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, to monitor its compliance with nuclear limits. Now, Araghchi said Iran would stop negotiations with Europe if they were to trigger the sanctions. If they do snap back, that means that this is the end of the road for them, he said. So there you have it, you guys. Things are intensifying, and they are saying they can do pretty much whatever they want, and they are disregarding the United States' position on this. Now, at the same time, I let you know earlier today, if you missed the live stream, watch it right after this. I'll pin it in the comments for you. We have heard that the rhetoric has been going back and forth between the United States and Russia, and today, Donald Trump said that he's going to be moving 2 nuclear submarines in position for Russia because of the words that were spoken. Now, let's just take a look at this very quickly here. President Donald Trump said that he ordered 2 nuclear submarines today to be positioned in the appropriate regions in a response to warnings made by the United States by Russian official Dmitry Medvedev. Medvedev on Monday said that each new ultimatum that Trump makes towards Russia is pressuring an end to that nation's conflict with Ukraine. It is a threat and a step towards war with the United States and Russia. President Donald Trump said on Friday today, he said that he ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions in response to warnings made by the United States this week by high-ranking Russian official Dmitry Medvedev. Medvedev, in a social media post on Monday, wrote that each new ultimatum that Trump makes about Russia to force an end to its war on Ukraine is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but within its own country, the United States. Trump earlier on Monday had said that he was going to be cutting from 50 days to less than 2 weeks the deadline for Russian President Vladimir Putin to reach a peace deal with Ukraine or face big secondary tariffs on Moscow's trade partners. And on Friday, Trump wrote on Truth Social, based on the highly provocative statements of the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, who is now the deputy chairman of Security Council for the Russian Federation, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that. Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances, Trump said. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts. I will pin the full coverage, the live stream, the video footages in the comments for you so you can watch that right after this one if you are interested. But a lot going on, and let me know your thoughts. Where are we going from here? Today is August the 1st. We still have several months left in the year. Are we going to be in war before the end of the year? If you think so, put a war in the comments. If you think no, put peace. Let me know your thoughts. But regardless of what unfolds, I'll be sure to keep you up to date here on the channel. But there is a whole lot going on with Russia, Iran, the trades taking place. And he said Russia has until August 8th to get this figured out. The Ukrainian-Russian war needs to come to an end. Or he said he's going to get even more aggressive with Russia. And now we're seeing Russia make nuclear threats against the United States. So we will see where it goes from here, and I will keep you up to date. Let me know your thoughts. I'm starting to see war pouring into the comments. I'll keep you up to date every step of the way. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, please take a second, hit that like button. Really helps out the channel a ton. Subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. And I cite all the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it, so that way you can know and rest assured that this is the latest as of today, August 1st, 2025. But that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a blessed evening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.